The next person actually is very special to me and to the organization. I'm going to read out his introduction. Most chairmen lead with suits and slides, but he leads with couplets and values in every stride. From chemistry labs to boardroom calls, he rhymes his way through global sprawls. He's preserved mangroves protected green and built machines that keep things clean. Whilst new leaders chase unicorns, numbers and hype, he's focused on what's just and not just what's ripe. MIT, Stanford and Harvard, he's done the hat trick, but what truly defines him is the Godrej ethic. A businessman, a poet, a philanthropist with might, with safes that guard our wealth and a culture that guards what's right. The Godrej name still stands upright. And for me, this isn't just ceremonial. He's been a mentor, and since my grandfather died, has helped me navigate every tide. He's been at I.I.M.U.N since nearly a decade of twists and turns. His quiet counsel has helped us rise, reflect, and learn. And whenever I seek his advice, he never just tells me what to do. He listens, reflects, offers wisdom that never feels like a to-do. He speaks Russian, was decorated by the French, shares my love for Peru and Japan, two cultures we both quench. Whilst we visit countries to learn and roam, he studies them deeply from language to genome. More knowledgeable than most, more curious than many, and yes, proudly Parsi, beloved by all. Don't go by his height, for he's forever standing tall. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please rise to welcome the incomparable chairman of the Godrej Group, Nadir Godrej. We were just discussing as to how I tried to write a poem, because most of his answers are in verse, and that's the good part. For the ones who have to understand, they understand, and for the ones who are not supposed to understand, they never understand as to what is actually happening and what he's saying. There are many things I want to talk to him about, but at the very outset, what I will say is, for a man whose time is sought after by all and sundry, both in his company, in CII, in FICCI, in chambers of commerce all across the world, for him to be able to spend time, come here and talk to all of us is the biggest thing for me personally. So thank you so much, sir, for doing this.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
So you've done a chemical engineering from MIT, master's from Stanford, and an MBA from Harvard. Yeah, you saw the reaction. It's a dream academic trilogy. How did this shape the Nadir Godrej that we see today?
As a chemical engineer, I had a deep understanding of science. But the one thing good about America is that you get a broad education. While I was at MIT, every semester you had to do one humanities subject. So I did things like, or social science. So I did psychology, economics, French, and French civilization. And the French civilization course was a big eye-opener because it taught you about French music, French science, French history, French literature, and it left a lasting expression on me. And I've always been very interested in a broad education because of that.
And sir, you spoke about how the United States of America gives you an international outlook. It exposes you to so many things. But sir, sometimes I feel that, a one-size-fit-all formula, or, going abroad, finishing your high school, doing your SATs, and then going overseas may not fit everybody. Today, sir, there are it's about, if I'm not wrong, 39,000 crore worth of loans that have been taken in the last 10 years alone. It's 4.6 lakh students who have gone abroad. But when you compare the ones who've actually gotten a job after they finish graduation, the statistic is not very promising. Therefore, do you think that, is it beneficial for students to take huge loans and then study in some of these universities? Or do you think that there is another approach also?
Yes. Some degree of foreign exposure is good.
Right.
But if you think that you were going to study abroad and then live abroad, it's not the best idea. And more abroad schools are coming up in India, like Ashoka, and CII is working on setting up the Nayanta University. So I think that is an option. And there is another interesting option, that is some universities have part of the course in India and part of the course abroad. I think that might be a very interesting option because it's not as expensive. You do get some foreign exposure, and then you get a good opportunity to relate the foreign exposure to India as well because you're studying for some time in India.
Right. And so you spoke about good Indian universities coming up. One of the things that I've always felt is that the reason why most of my peers went overseas to study was the lack of quality schools in India in terms of higher educational institutions. Nayanta, of course, which you are also an integral part of, till it comes about, and of course there's the Ashoka and the Jindal, and there are many schools that have come up, private universities. What are the skills that young students should focus on up until the time that we have very many of these private universities or universities where they can actually go and hone their skills? What are the skills that you would advise them to study?
Some of it is what Joseph Muscat said. Try and get a broad education, try and follow your passion, don't necessarily go what everyone else expects of you, try and figure out what you want to do. No harm in listening to those other people. Sometimes you can combine two professions, as Joseph Muscat has done, or three professions. So learn different things. I've used a lot of science in my business, and I've used a lot of poetry when I have to make speeches. So I'm pursuing both of them, and that gives you a lot of fun and a lot of opportunity to do different things.
And you use poetry to communicate.
Yes.
And therefore, I'm looking forward to the poems that you've got today. But when we talk about role models, sir, we always see the success. We see the glamour. We see the good things on social media and even otherwise in newspapers, etc. Very seldomly do we speak about failures. And I wanted to ask you, has there been, any defining failure in your life? And if you were comfortable in sharing that with all of us, and what did you learn from that failure?
Right. There was one striking failure fairly early in my career, and I'd written a poem about that, so I'll recite that poem. And as Joseph Muscat said, failure is experience. And if you learn from your failure, you haven't failed. But if you don't learn from your failure, that's bad. So always, no matter how bad the failure, if you've learned something, it will hold you in good stead because failure is the best educator. It's not universities.
Failure is the best educator, not universities. That is very, very important, yes.
Now, life has its ups and downs. It's full of smiles as well as frowns. Indeed, there is a lot of churning. But troubled times are great for learning. And therefore, I'll relate my story, a tale of trouble and some glory. I had no idea what was in store. 1 year, our loss was 80 crore. We wondered why we had invested in something so strange and untested as making olefins from oil. It hardly seemed worth all that toil. But alcohol was an intermediate, not ethyl, which gives an immediate kick to all those who imbibe it, and therefore I describe it as from C12 to C18. Ethyl, by the way, is C2. And now this change in tack would mean a change in all our strategy. To lead this change was up to me. A merger helped to save our skin. You must survive before you win. We lived to fight another day. Step by step, we found the way. We had to work to make things right. On every front, we had to fight. Now we had suffered for our sins. But since we stopped the olefins, we had 2 columns that were idle. Not using them was suicidal. Configuring them for fractionation, we used them for the preparation of much-desired single cuts. And when we settle into ruts, Such innovation gets us out. And I have not the slightest doubt our engineers helped save the day, the continuous improvement way. With the help of all of them, we started off with TQM. We learned a lot of useful stuff, but all of that was not enough. We learned to stretch capacity with bellicose rapacity. We focused on the bottlenecks with grips that could well throttle necks. And month by month, the throughput rose with just an occasional dose of investment in a plant that's new. We kept the number to just a few. From time to time, our plants were down, and this would cause us all to frown. Now, TPM was a solution. For us, it was a revolution. The plants were up more and more. The costs were going to the floor. Everywhere the throughput rose, and we had a healthy dose of cutting costs everywhere. With energy, we took great care. Whatever saving was suggested, we evaluated and invested. All of this was very fine and added to the bottom line. The catalyst was optimized, the throughput was maximized, the profits were then supersized. Production wasn't the only story. Now marketing brought us some glory. Flaked longer chains were our forte. We found new markets for a sortie. In China, we could sell a lot. We liked the margins that we got in Argentina and Brazil. Our coffers we could slowly fill. Our people are our real strength. We know they'll go to any length, and any problem can be solved if all our people are involved. And TQM and TPM are perfect for involving them. Years later, we still cruise along. Our engineers have made us strong. Our products are now unfurled in every part of the world. I think by now we exude much confidence, and to conclude, I think that we can safely state that India now will surely rate as a good base to produce all chemicals, and that's good news. In India, you can surely earn. But these lessons one should learn. Your markets should be everywhere. You must ensure that you take care, that all your plants are global scale. Niche markets can help you prevail. Good service is a perfect treat. It always helps you to compete. Since others have done it before, push on, for you can be quite sure that you'll succeed. Have no fears. Employ the best of engineers, for they will help you optimize, and then you'll surely win the prize.
Thank you for that. I come back to what you mentioned earlier, sir. You said failure is bigger than university. On a lighter note, what about those who fail in school and university?
As long as they've learned something, it'll be very useful.
So if you're not scoring heavily in your...
Analyze why you failed. If you failed because you were studying the wrong thing, change.
So even if you're not scoring very well, it's not too difficult to eventually do well in life.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's what your poem also, in a way, speaks
Yes.
about. Yes.
And it's not about, as Joseph Muscat also said, it's not about what you know, but it's about how you learn, and to make sure that you learn throughout your life. You don't learn just in school and in university.
And I must say this, sir, because not just because he's here, but because I've seen him do this. There was a session on design thinking that was taking place, and it was a bunch of educators who were sitting in the room, and sir came and sir sat there for a good 2.5 hours listening to a lecturer talk about design thinking, when I'm pretty sure he himself could have given a lecture at any university across the world on design thinking. I've seen this in him in terms of being a forever learner, and therefore the role models we're getting to you, it's very easy to get a real influencer and an Instagram influencer to come here and talk to you. But the people who are coming here and talking to you, right from General Pandey to Nadir sir, are people who actually are worth emulating. But talking about qualities in people that one must emulate, my role model growing up for tennis was Roger Federer. Now, of course, is the era of Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. Much has changed both in tennis and in life. The definitions of role models, sir, are also changing. My question to you, did you have a role model growing up? And who, and what did you learn from them?
I was fortunate to have excellent role models in the family. And I've written poems about them. So
Hey, if you
you
could.
can bear with me for a little while. The first one was my maternal grandmother. She was quite unusual. She was born in 1890, and when she went to college, to Elphinstone College, there were only 8 girls in the college. So she used to play rounders in the women's common room, because they had enough space. It was as big as the men's common room. There were many men in college, and there were 8 girls in the college. So this is the one about my grandmother. My granny, Mama, was named Shireen, was always calm and never mean. Her name in Persian just meant sweet, quite apt for such a dulcet treat. A British teacher in her school who sized her well, she was no fool, quite cleverly tweaked the spelling to serene, and there's no telling if character led to the name or vice versa. All the same, serene indeed was stately calm, for weary souls a soothing balm, a freedom fighter for the nation, and poet for the cause of liberation. With great verve she would recite, I still recall that glorious sight. A love of literature was kindled there, a love that mother would also share. She also sometimes took to verse for greeting cards that were terse. But then the art that brought her glory was a different medium, the short story. In all her subjects, Serene was bright, except for maths, which was her plight. Professors then were mostly Brits. A stereotype sometimes fits. The only Indian was professor of mathematics, don't you scoff. In every subject, Serene did well, except for maths, where her grades fell. Professor Dastur's pride was hurt. He had to give Serene a spurt. He soon went on a remedial mission and called her in for home tuition. His dapper nephew was on the scene and quick to notice young Serene. His proposal quickly carried, and very soon they were married.
Yes, yes.
Can I continue with the others?
Yes, yes, please. But before you continue with the
Yes,
others,
sure.
I'm sure that many resonated with the mathematics part.
Right. There's something about that in my mother as well. So wait, and then we'll discuss it.
Please, please.
My father. My father partnered me in life, in times of joy and times of strife. He taught me from my earliest days to learn in most unusual ways. A learned man he always was. And I say this not just because he proudly claimed a PhD. There was much more, as you will see. Strange relations he could spot by linking each and every dot. In science he was a real king, but his bat he'd readily swing at many subjects under the sun in ways that were so much fun. History, geography, linguistics, and free market economics were subjects that he would relish, and all of these he would embellish with anecdotes that linked them well. And at an early age I could tell that linking subjects helps you learn. Today I know it helps you earn. The years he spent in Germany were a lasting legacy, and even native speakers found his German was very sound. And Austria then asked him to be their nation's honorary CG. One thing I found very nice, Papa was always most precise. We all recall the common sight, his Mercedes with the reading light, the trip he took around the site, ensuring everything was right. They always fought dirt and grime, came on time, and left on time. Enjoyed his work, enjoyed his play, watched that movie, saw this play, and classical music warmed his heart. Before dinner, the gramophone would start. It was he who taught me chess, but what I liked the most, I guess, was my special midweek boon. Every Thursday afternoon, we'd go down the one-file road that led to the factory at Delisle Road. We would then head to Juhu Beach, in those days easily in reach. It was a real delight to be with parents swimming in the sea. We would then dine so very well and play cutthroat bridge at Juhu Hotel. And to this day, I love to swim and be a foodie and still stay trim. And I've always thanked my mom and dad for starting me on this pleasant fad. All these interests, I am sure, I imbibed from him, some less, some more. Now my mother.
Right, sir.
My mother. Her father taught her to be free and always question authority. But from her mother, she had a yearning for literature and constant learning. All khaki-clad, they could see the virtues of simplicity. Satyagraha was in the air, and Granny sought to do her share. She criticized the colonial curse with her patriotic verse, but not content to merely write, she took on the Swadeshi fight. Wherever foreign goods were spotted, the ladies asked they be boycotted. This was a noble sacrifice, but there was a heavy price. The family was unattended. How on earth could this be mended? Jai was the eldest of the lot. Her brothers very quickly got a very capable second mother, and all of them helped one another. Of both home and studies she took care, and did it all with the greatest flair. Could she then have learned multitasking? Alas, I never thought of asking. Now looking back, I clearly see she was a master of efficiency. Recycling one could always see, as well as 5S and GMP. I also think she learned the towering power one wields by empowering. The theme played out at home and school, indeed a very powerful tool. Her discipline was very light. You might well say out of sight. For a child to grow and live, reinforcement must be positive. Then a child will safely cruise, free of any hurt or bruise. Her childhood had a lot to do with the life she would pursue. Managing her younger brothers made her feel she could teach others. And so she did BA, B.Ed. Didn't start with kids, but instead, she did a stint of teacher training. I still recall her explaining that all the students, everyone, indeed was older, barring none. She was convinced that education is partnership and participation. It should be egalitarian and not at all authoritarian. And she knew well how to train, no matter what the domain. Papa knew well his geography, but Mummy didn't really see the purpose of just knowing facts. They could be found in tomes or tracts. Without knowing the Aral Sea, how could she teach geography? She would respond she needn't know the facts by heart for knowledge to flow. It happens that a girl is told her pretty head shouldn't hold elaborate thoughts beyond her ken, perhaps a conspiracy of men. At Gamaria School, my mother taught English Lit, a class well sought by all the students in the school. But mother played it by the rule. When called in as a substitute, the joyous girls, quite astute, yelled, "Poetry, poetry!" A subject they loved, you see. But the period had been designated for maths, and so she elucidated an abstruse theorem lucidly. A math-dreading girl could quickly see the logical explanation. For her, it was a revelation. A subject that used to make her tense suddenly seemed to make some sense. So, there's reason in math, she gasped, and insight belatedly grasped. Mom collected dropped needles and pins and treated these finds as little wins. Was this just a cleanup mission or a strange superstition? Not that she ever gave a sign. She thought superstition fine. But she says that she kept score. One day she picked up 24. And on that day she sought an ad from Godrej and she met my dad. And marriage, I think, was quite a change. The Dastur home was a free range. For a person educated and trained, this new life was somewhat constrained. For postgraduate school, she had been set Alas, that dream was never met. But yet she rarely showed regret, for she was not the kind to fret. She plunged right into her new life of teacher, mother, and loving wife. Much of her life had been spent at Udyachal school, where she went, along with Papa, thrice a week. That is how she chose to seek a perfectly balanced life as teacher, mother, and wife. She'd teach one class all the way, and seeing them day after day, for years on end, she'd know them well. Today, any of them can tell us all about her mentoring style. And though it's been a while, their memories are very bright because their bond was very tight. She'd rope me in occasionally, and when I went, I could see her class was always full of noise, the lively talk of girls and boys, cooperating in their work. No one would ever think to shirk, for learning seemed like so much fun. And very soon their work was done, and they were free to read or paint. The syllabus was no constraint. The topics would range far and wide, and anyone could well decide what new tack the class would take. And they were all free to make their observations known to all. No contribution was too small. Always friendly, never stern, she merely taught them how to learn. They felt they learned on their own steam. This helped improve their self-esteem. Every one of them stood tall and learned respect for one and all. And that stood them all in good stead, and all her students forged ahead. But because she showed the way, I am what I am today, and many others feel the same. She taught us how to play life's game.
How lovely.
And the last one is about my brother.
Please, of course.
My brother Adi. Adi is my elder brother. For good advice, there was no other. He always took the greatest care, and in all things was very fair. At school, he was extremely smart, except for art. For fame, he never seemed to hanker. In SSC, he was first ranker. Then Xavier's College up to Inter. He then had to contend with winter, as his next step was MIT, where when just 21, you see, he was both bachelor and master, and few have ever done it faster. Once back home, he started work. No matter what, he'd never shirk. This was way back in '63. The years have passed, as you can see. His arrival meant rising hopes for 40-year-old Godrej soaps. Just 2 crore was then the size, and Adi set out to modernize. MBAs were soon recruited, and cars for managers were mooted. The marketing was revamped, and those who couldn't change decamped. He introduced cost accounting, and soon the sales started mounting. But hair dye was his greatest coup, and over the years it grew and grew. The 90s then brought quite a change. The landscape now seemed very strange, with multinationals at the door. We hardly knew what was in store. Pepsi and Coke bought all in sight. Should we sell or should we fight? We chose a path that's in between. In hindsight, now it can be seen that Indian firms that learned to hone their skills easily held their own. But then we thought that we should seek strong partners or we would stay weak. And so we formed the odd joint venture, which proved to be quite an adventure. We learned a lot, and that's for sure. It helps us still to endure. An acquisition that was bold brought HI into our fold. That's household insecticide. And many more were unfurled as we spread around the world. Though Godrej soaps began to soar, on market price we couldn't score. Then our advisors thought it fit that Godrej soaps should be split. GCPL came into being, and Adi, very quickly seeing the trend for better governance, put into place all at once, with lots of help from CII, best practices that surely vie with the very best in the world when our new stock was then unfurled. It very soon began to fly, and to this day, it still stays high. GIL, Godrej Industries, came into being. In recent days, we are seeing our chemical business steadily rise as we diversify and specialize. Our new products should ensure that the rapid growth will endure. The shares we hold, as you can tell, are also doing very well. In these companies at the start, Adi played a major part. And today, one clearly sees that now Godrej Properties, which he served with fealty, has really arrived in realty. For agrovet, animal feed can be considered our core creed. But it was not always so. And many of you may not know the way we stumbled into feed. For compound feed, they saw no need. Then Bueller sought out L&T. Together they had tried to see if a market might exist. There were no takers on their list. They chose to make a clean swipe, but were left with a prototype. A discount customer was sought, and Adi was the one who bought. Serendipity and not a vision thus gave birth to this division. In time, the business forged ahead. Geographically, we chose to spread. And on my watch, we diversified. New businesses were then tried. Over the years, it has grown, and now it's listed on its own. But it was Adi who laid the seed that permitted us to succeed. Is Adi's success because of skill, or is it more his iron will? For Adi was always organized, and punctuality was prized. By dusk, his desk is very neat. His paperwork is all complete. Not agonizing is the trick. Decisions must be very quick. Adi can't stand the status quo or novel things he wants to know. And if he thinks that is right, he puts all his will and might behind the new initiative. And with the support that he can give, we quickly learn the latest ways, make sure the group sees better days. But while he strove for the group, the industry was in the loop. He's always ready to lend a hand, be president or take a stand with government on policy, and he'll persist till industry gets exactly what it needs. And this is how he succeeds.
Remarkable. All four people that you spoke about, one word, remarkable. But also another adjective, all of them very curious.
Yes.
All of them forever learners. All of them people who stood by certain ideals and the fact that they stuck by them right through. And there are many things that I'm sure that you've learned from them, which you have written through verse. There's a reason why he's here, in comparison to any startup founder or any shark in a tank. A shark tank is very different from a whale in the ocean, and the people that he spoke about, which, if so, I would request you to elaborate quickly on this after this statement, which is, his group has been in business for 125 years. Sharks in tanks have made business, sold those businesses, and most are not profitable. The group has survived a lot of things and has been one of the first groups to actually support India. The ballot box, when you turn 18 and you vote, the first ballot box was made by the Godrej group. So, yeah. And so the reason why I want you to, sir, perhaps distill some of the learnings that you have put in verse as to qualities that young entrepreneurs must have. Because in a day and age where everything is about valuation and everybody wants a big valuation, your group has built things that I would say are value creations. And therefore, what are the things that you've learned from your family which could be very useful for a young entrepreneur?
One very important thing is ESG and corporate social responsibility. Another important value is we've always appreciated diversity, and diversity gives, cognitive diversity gives you good ideas, because if you keep hiring people of the same type, you will only get one kind of idea.
Correct.
So it's very important to be diverse. It's very important to help society. It's very important to be ethical. All these things are values that are in our family. And it's very important to have the nation's interest at heart. In fact, if it hadn't been for Mahatma Gandhi, we wouldn't have had a business. The founder of our business, my granduncle, Nadir Godrej, was a lawyer. He had no interest in business. And he was born in the same year as Mahatma Gandhi. And he knew Mahatma Gandhi. And one day he told Mahatma Gandhi, "You are talking about an Indian Indian independence, that's ridiculous. This country doesn't have an economy. So what do you think Mahatma Gandhi said? He said, what are you doing about it? So this lawyer became a self-trained scientist and inventor and started a business.
And that was the formative years of the Godrej Group. And those were the formative years of the Godrej Group.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But sir, you spoke about India. Now, one thinker whom I particularly admire, Jiddu Krishnamurti, he says, nationalism is a process of isolation and an outcome of the search for power. It cannot bring about peace in the world. But then again, like you mentioned, that one has to serve the country, and a nation gives us a sense of identity. It gives us a sense of purpose. So in a world of hyper-nationalism, how do you toe the line between hyper-nationalism, jingoism, and what would be patriotism?
Yes. No, it's to solve the kind of problems we have today, both geopolitics and climate change. As you said, we need multilateral institutions. The Paris Treaty on Climate Change was a way to solve the problem. We did that with when the ozone layer was under attack, we were able to do something. When we were scared of nuclear war, we were able to do something. We do need to think globally. If you go back to human history, we lived in tribes of about 200 people. So tribalism was a strong phenomenon. Within the tribe, we had these wonderful values of loving, caring, and looking after each other, which hold us in good stead. And yet we would fight with the next tribe. So we have these two instincts. Correct. And this tribal instinct is what causes nationalism. And politicians try to exploit it because nationalism is a good way to win votes. They have often found that. And it's happening in many countries. Correct. My father had a personal experience of this because when he did his PhD, he was in Nazi Germany. He studied in Nazi Germany from 1933 to 1939. In 1939, the British ambassador came to all the British students and all the Indian students and told them to go home. He helped Jews escape from Nazi Germany. This was before the war, by taking money from them and arranging for them to get money in London when they reached London. So he was always very, very scared of extreme nationalism because he knew what the Nazis did. He knew what the fascists in Italy did. Right. And the Nazis and the people who influenced the Nazis, actually they got a lot of their idea from American racists. All these ideas have a common origin and are spreading all around the world, and we have to be very, very careful about them. We have to be proud of our country. We have to be proud that it's a diverse country. We have to be proud of every Indian, no matter what, religion, caste, disability, gender, whatever, and try to work together with the whole world if we are to have a stable future.
I think today you saw General Pandey also spoke about, General Manoj Pandey also spoke about the same thing, that we need to believe in the concept and the thread, the very fabric on what our constitution is built, unity in diversity. And again, you were speaking about the same thing. If we want to unite nations, India needs to believe in the fabric that diversity must be celebrated. So one thing that the Godrej Group has done immaculately well is celebrating diversity. I've seen this firsthand where the LGBTQ plus community has been celebrated. You've supported the movement in many a way. Same-sex marriage, yet in our country, in the social fabric, is not as accepted. What are your views on same-sex marriage, and what are your views on the LGBTQ plus movement?
I think we need to support it. and more countries are accepting same-sex marriage. I think you mentioned that Mr. Muscat also introduced it in Malta.
In Malta.
And he made a very good point. He says he didn't want to refuse speaking to African countries that did not permit it. Many African countries are very conservative on this issue. It's important to have a dialogue with these people and slowly convince them. Already, I think same-sex partnerships are acceptable in India, and they have certain rights also, if not the right to get married.
Right.
And gradually, things will happen. We don't have to rush, but we should make steady progress. And we should, many religions, many traditions are against these things, but these are facts of life. And we should accept facts of life, provided they are indeed facts of life. And science can often tell us that.
That actually brings me, I want to come to what Gandhiji said in his book, but before I do that, I want to ask you this also. What age, sir, do you think that they should be exposed to it? Because gender, one thing is about same-sex relationships, which is one part of the conversation. The second is gender identity. Gender identity, many feel that it should be rooted, whilst gender expression should be fluid. At what age do you think is it okay for sex change operations to take place, given the fact that at 14, 15, 16, and 17, you may not be in the best position in order to make a life-altering decision? The counter-argument that many have given me is saying, Rishabh, if you say that a 16-year-old should vote, why can't a 16-year-old change their gender? But sir, you can change your vote, but you can't change your gender necessarily once again. Even the operations yet are not scientifically proven. I mean, you cannot yet do it. So my question to you, sir, is, at what age do you think that this conversation is an appropriate conversation to be introduced to a child?
Frankly, I'm not an expert on this. And you have clearly pointed out the dilemma. What did you say? That gender expression is one thing. No matter what your gender, you can express another gender. But a sex change is a major operation. We don't know all the consequences. You probably know some of the consequences. Some research has been done. I'm not sure all the research is clear-cut.
Correct.
And it's very difficult to decide at what age you become an adult. You could argue 21, you could argue 18, you could even argue 16.
Correct.
Lower than 16, I don't think anyone would argue.
Yes.
And this is a tricky issue. And
right.
I think that we need to keep discussing it, debating it, finding out more facts before we can take a truthful decision.
And which is what brings me to my favorite book, which Gandhiji wrote. And he said, earlier I used to think that God is truth, and then I realized that truth is God. And my question to you is on the front of religion and also on truth. But both will be answered when you explain what is it that God means to you.
Right. I've always been very, very interested in science. One of an early book I read was The Voyage of the Beagle.
Right.
And Charles Darwin's struggle. He was a Christian. I think his father was a clergyman. And it was becoming more and more evident to him that he knew how the world was created rather than what the Bible said. So this is the contradiction. At the same time, religion has a lot of good in it. A lot of humanitarian values come from religion.
Correct.
Gandhiji also had the same dilemma. He was a very religious man, and even more important, he was a very spiritual man. But what happens if some so-called dogmatic fact of religion is not true? That is why I think Gandhi veered from God is truth to truth is God. Not I've always been very skeptical about the idea of God, but I have a lot of very religious friends. I was always very amused by what Voltaire said. He had two quotations. One was, if God didn't exist, we would have to invent him. Maybe that's what we did. And there was a good reason to do that. And the other thing he said was, man made God in his own image, paraphrasing the Bible. So I feel that there's probably a need for religion, but we should fight against untruthful religion.
So what would you say then to, what would you say if Karl Marx were to say to you, which he said, that religion is the opium for the masses? And sometimes I believe this, that because we could not make enough opium, therefore we mass produce religion. This is what I fundamentally sometimes believe when I see how religion is interpreted today.
Yeah.
Because no Jesus is standing upstairs and counting, saying, how many candles have you burnt for me? And there is no Allah who's standing outside and who's checking how many shawls have you put per se. So my question to you in this regard is that if a Marx were to say this today to you, what would you make of it?
As long as you don't, religion is fine, as long as you don't go to sleep and stop thinking. Don't get drunk. If you think properly, and here I would like to quote Zoroaster. Zoroaster, the prophet of Zoroastrianism, the prophet of the Parsis, he was fighting the traditional religions. The traditional religion of Persia was very similar to the traditional religions of India, or even the Greek and the Roman religions, because all the Indo-Europeans had very similar religious ideas. As they spread from Central Asia to Europe and South Asia, and that's where they spread to, they carried these religions with them. And Zoroaster formulated the idea of one God and one devil, because he couldn't believe that God created evil. But he always said, don't believe what I say. Think it out for yourself. If you think it out for yourself, you will know what is right.
Keep thinking.
Keep thinking. Keep thinking.
And
make sure that religion doesn't make you do evil. And if religion makes you do good, that's wonderful.
And therefore, and any rationalist would agree that the second that you stop thought and thinking, then you've given up the very purpose and meaning of life.
Absolutely. But at the same time, we mustn't let thought lead us into agitation.
Of course. And
meditation is a good idea.
Correct.
But you shouldn't stop thinking.
You shouldn't stop thinking, correct. And which is, and I feel at least, and this is what Krishnamurti also said, and so many, Ramana Maharishi said this, that, and if you are able to observe yourself thinking, if you are able to detach yourself and then observe thought. So the process of meditation as it is defined by many seers is also the fact that you don't have to stop thought, as is prescribed by religion sometimes, that you need to reach a state of blissful awareness. Many, like Krishnamurti and Ramana, say that you must observe thought yourself as well. But sir, as much as I enjoy this part of the conversation, I know that there is the scientist in you and also a person who keeps his time. So I will quickly ask you, who is your favorite, and if you can tell me, your favorite scientist?
My favorite scientist is a very personal thing, Antoine Laurent Lavoisier. He's the father of chemistry. I'm a chemical engineer. He's a Frenchman, and I love the French. And he has the same birthday as me.
Ah, lovely. So, and when I say philosopher, favorite philosopher, who's your favorite philosopher?
My favorite philosopher, there are so many philosophers. I would say all the philosophers of the Enlightenment.
So somebody like a Voltaire would be...
Somebody like Voltaire, Rousseau, and even the British philosophers, Locke, and even Adam Smith.
Your favorite poet?
My favorite poet is Vikram Seth, because I learned a lot from him, and I learned how to write Pushkin sonnets because of him, because he wrote Golden Gate in Pushkin sonnets.
Politician?
If you have a little time,
Sure.
I'll recite a poem about when I met Vikram Seth.
I'm very grateful that you carried all of these poems and that you're actually reciting them for us.
This poem is in Pushkin sonnets, and Vikram wrote Golden Gate in Pushkin sonnets. And this is about the first time I met him for any real length of time. I'd been to one or two of his book launches before that. When invited to a Lit Fest dinner by Firoza, that's my cousin, I traipsed downstairs. We stood in the heat, there were few chairs. The evening proved to be a winner. As Sudha, Vikram and I conversed, but in literature, we weren't immersed. Sudha, of course, was so inclined, but Vikram's interests are so wide that though for literature she pined, a theorem's proof was supplied. Now maths makes Vikram quite excited, and hearing this, I swiftly cited, maths for poets, so apropos. Now little did dear Sudha know that Platonic solids would be discussed, but Vikram mentioned there were just 5. That's when I challenged him to strive for proof. Sudha must have cussed. But I, of course, just thank fate that I had met a true soulmate. Vikram desired another meeting. He wished to get to know Bombay. He had all his friends competing, each one on a different day, exposing some unusual facet. So what could be my special asset? Now trudging in the heat was spurned, and so my mind busily churned, and in a stroke of easy brilliance, it struck me that my Bombay snub could be a trip to every club. That wouldn't stress my frail resilience, and Vikram quickly scooped the ball and dubbed the trip, what else? Club crawl. Now Rati joined the expedition, but found the club crawl rather tame, and so we modified the mission. For minor changes, I was game. Bombay was still a steamy oven. I nixed Dhobi Ghat, but not Mani Bhavan, which Vikram thought was very cool. While walking past Breach Candy's pool, our poetic star was recognized by a fascinated fan. Her master's was about our man. All 3 of us were so surprised. We watched the sunset with a drink. The club specialty, rather pink. Bacardi splashed in pomegranate, a fruit resembling a grenade. These days, who knows, someone might ban it. Explosive cocktails can be an aid to creative thought, and thus inspired. At Willingdon Club, he inquired if they could claim a special drink. None was proffered. But I do think when Nariyal Pani got a mention, Vikram rocketed up and away. Bacardi again was brought in play, and that, my dear friends, was the invention of Dabardi, Vikram's portmanteau name. Rati and I enjoyed this game.
Again, I'm sure there was a delightful rendezvous. Yes.
And then we met several times
After that. But if I may request you to recommend one book that everybody should read, what would it be?
Based on the discussions we've had today,
Yes.
I think Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. It makes the case for the arguments of the Enlightenment, all the things we've been discussing about logic, reason, and also the counter-arguments and how people get into extreme nationalism and so on. So I think Enlightenment Now would be a very good book.
An Enlightenment Now. We'll get a copy for everybody if you're interested. But if you are interested. Some are interested, yes. But the last 3 words, when I say the first word, when I say youth, what comes to mind? Future. When I say India, what comes to mind?
Diversity.
And when I say I.I.M.U.N, what comes to mind?
Enlightened youth.
Enlightened youth. And yeah, I'll end this with one thing that I learned from my grandfather. He used to tell me saying, before you go before you go and meet a knowledgeable person, please make sure that you've read 100 books, because the knowledgeable person will not have a conversation with you if you've not read the 100. So in preparation for every time that I talk to him, I have to read not 100 but 1,000 books. And I must tell you, at the I.I.M.U.N stage, we've had the good fortune of having everybody from Dr. Shashi Tharoor to Yuval Noah Harari to some of the biggest names across the world who are thinkers. But I will tell you with my hand on my heart and in front of all of them as well, if there is one person whose intellect and academic rationality I respect more than most, it is a man who's sitting in front of me.
Thank you.
It is a great pleasure, honor, and a privilege, sir. And before we let you go,
I know it's a delusion, but it's a very pleasant delusion.
So then again, Richard Dawkins wrote an entire book called The God Delusion. but if I may,
Also a very pleasant delusion.
also a very pleasant delusion. But if I may, sir, it's 11:40 on the clock, as promised. So, like I'll repeat this once again. A conversation with a knowledgeable person is better than reading 100 books, but I will always tell you, please read 100 and sometimes read 1,000, because when you are in conversation, you will need the 1,000 when you're talking to people like him. On behalf of everyone at I.I.M.U.N, thank you for everything that you do, and spend all the resources and your time at the organization. Thank you so very much, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's a small token of...
It's a pleasure, and it's lovely interacting with all of you.
Okay. A small token of appreciation that Akhilesh just wants to hand over.